Everybody, as you get in line for the buttermilk pie and the chocolate buttermilk pie here, I'm going to go ahead and start. I'm Eddie Deen. I came from Texas up here to show a little barbecue. How's everybody experience so far? Yeah, the people in line here, it's vanilla buttermilk pie, and there's a chocolate buttermilk pie and a chocolate buttermilk pie with pecans on it. So, as y'all come through the line. So how many of you guys want to learn the secrets to barbecue? How many of you guys want to learn very specifically how to cook the world's greatest brisket? Anybody? Just 3? The world's greatest brisket. You good? All right, I'm gonna give you the secrets. Back in Texas, I teach in homeless shelters and I teach in prison. And so when I walk into the prison, the first question I ask, do you want to learn the secrets to cooking the world's greatest brisket? And of course everybody says yeah, because what else are you gonna do in prison? So if you don't mind, if I treat you like inmates, because typically that's my audience. I teach in homeless shelters and also in prison. And so what I do is teach people how to feel lovable. I figured out the fastest way to get people to feel lovable. Does that make any sense? If you feel lovable, you can cook good barbecue. Okay, so the secrets to cooking brisket and large pieces of meat like the pulled pork you had, let me give you the secrets. First, in cooking barbecue, you gotta have a vision. And our vision is we gotta get it up to 195 degrees Fahrenheit. Can y'all hear me? I hear a lot of mumbling. Where's that coming from? Can y'all hear me now? Okay, so if I can get everybody quiet so I can hear myself. Wow, that was sweet. Okay, so in cooking brisket, our goal is 195 degrees so we can have what we call, we're chasing the butterfly. So in barbecue, what you want to do is release the butterfly in the pupa and the caterpillar and the egg. Does that make any sense? The idea is we want to harvest. We want to let go of the juiciness and tenderness in brisket. A brisket is found right here on the steer, and it's really a tough piece of meat. And so the idea is what we want to do is get to that place where it's juicy and tender. Did y'all enjoy your barbecue today? Okay, all right. Okay, so the secrets to cooking the world's greatest barbecue, we had a smoker out there. We had to get it to 225 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's the smoker. We had 2 smokers. This is my son Brent. He was manning the smokers today, or yesterday, the day before. So 225 degrees, so we took a brisket out of the cooler, let's say it's 35 degrees Fahrenheit. So now we got the smoker going, and our goal is 195 degrees. So in about 4 hours, the brisket gets up to about 140 degrees. Can y'all hear me now? Okay, so in about 4 hours, the brisket gets up to 140. But something very interesting takes place in the brisket. It gets to 140, then it goes into resistance. The temperature doesn't rise. And a lot of people get really confused about cooking barbecue because you go out there in 5 hours, 6 hours, and it's still 140 degrees. You go out there and it's still 145 degrees. It's not moving up. Do y'all know why the brisket, the temperature's not moving up fast? Does anybody know why? Okay, here's the secret. 95% of the weight of the brisket is water. So what happens after it hits 140, internal temperature 140, it starts evaporating. The water evaporates and cools off the whole muscle. So a lot of people get really confused in cooking barbecue because they go out there and it's 140, it's 140, it's 140, it's 140, and 140, and they get and so what they do is increase the temperature, which is a mistake. What you want to do is stay really persistent in 225 degrees. Are y'all with me? Okay, so I'm giving you the secrets. My history, I've catered over 87,000 guests for President George W. Bush. For the last 24 years in Texas, we've done all the inaugurations. We've had 14,000 people in 45 minutes. We've had 15,538 minutes. For Rick Perry, we've had 13,529 minutes. Last January, we did Governor Abbott's second inauguration. We've had 10,000 people. And so the idea is, for the last 24 years in Texas, what we want to do is set the stage for our guests and customers to have great experiences. So we came up here to New York to show you what that feels like, what that means to get to that place.
Hello, can y'all hear me? Okay, what he's saying, we did the governor inauguration. When he says inauguration, we cater to the governor. For the last 24 years. Now, the first time we tried out against 100 caterers, and doing them down to 3, doing them down to 2, doing them down to 1, we got it. We fed 15,000 people in 38 minutes. Now, I want to put this in perspective. Anybody familiar with the state of Texas? We live 4.5 hours from Austin. Now, I want you to think, how many barbecue places are in Texas? How many barbecue places did we pass on the way to Austin to feed the governor of Texas? How many barbecue places did we pass when we got into Austin to feed the governor of Texas? So I want you to process that. So what he's saying is our vision, the way we look at product is different than anybody else, okay? Is it time for the milk question or no?
Not yet.
All right, we'll let that ride. But I want to break it down. I know y'all up here and y'all don't quite understand as much as we do in Texas, so, I'm just kidding with y'all. No, but put in perspective, we are 4 hours from Austin, where the governor's at, and that is how far we travel just to accomplish that. But the point is that's how many places, I guess, we beat, is what I'm trying to say. And I know I'm trying to put in perspective because y'all are up here and y'all quite don't know the geology of Texas. In Texas, everybody understands because there's a barbecue restaurant in every single corner. So, go ahead.
You know, it was the first time we did the event for Governor Bush, when he was running for governor or whatever. They looked at 80 of the top caterers in Texas and got it down to 16. And they chose, 8 of us to go to Austin do a food tasting. So we went and won that event. So for the last 24 years, we've done the gubernatorial inauguration in Austin. But here we are in cooking brisket, and I want to give you those secrets. So it gets up to 140, then it goes in this resistance. But eventually we stay with that 225. We get up to 160 degrees. And there's an enzyme inside the muscle, it's called capsaicin. And so the key is to trigger that capsaicin. And it'll trigger it at 122, but it actually does its work at 160 degrees. So there's an enzyme in the muscle that basically, if we get to that 160 degree internal temperature, now we're on the way up to the promised land. We're on the way up to let the butterfly unfold in the brisket. Are y'all with me there? So this resistance is really, really interesting. And so for the last 16, 18 years, I've been teaching in homeless shelters. And so when I was looking at this diagram, I saw something very similar in differences. To the guys in the shelter, fundamentally who's drug addicted, methamphetamines, crack cocaine, heroin, and all the different problems they were having, I saw there's a pattern that if I place the heat on the individual, basically if I put the right energy plus information into the system, and we get to a vision of being free from drug addiction, this is the same pattern. So basically, when I walk into an audience, what I recognize is that if a person is raised in shame, and they're raised in their guilt, and their apathy, and their grief, what I have to do is put heat on the system to get them out of those filters. Does that make any sense? So what we've done in Texas is created the world's fastest program to actually take people out of addiction. Right now we got it down to 10 hours. 10 hours of interaction. And so I want to give you that secret. I started off with the secrets of barbecue, but now I want to give you the secrets to how to walk people out of an addiction, drug addiction, homelessness, self-destructive behavior, feelings of inadequacy. And so, if an individual is brought up, a child is brought up in shame and guilt and apathy and grief, basically those systems starts dictating the realities of their life. And it was 16 years ago, there was 20 ladies in the shelter and there's 40 men. And I asked this question, when did you perceive your power or control was taken away? 20 ladies, 40 men. This lady told a story, and we went to the next story, and the next story, and we went through all the ladies and halfway through the men, and there's a guy just got out of prison that week. He said, Mr. Deen, everybody's a 5-year-old. I said, what do you mean? He said, every story of shame and guilt and grief, sexual abuse, mental abuse, physical abuse, all these different toxic environments that was taking place was that of a 5-year-old. So we had 60 homeless people in the shelter, and the common denominator between all these people, the similarities and differences in all these people, was that of a 5-year-old. So on that day, I asked this question, what happens when you're 5 years old? What happens when you guys were 5 years old? You learn how to ride a bicycle, correct? So what I did is went to the shop and put an extra gear in the bicycle, that when you turn right, the wheel left. Does that make sense? Okay, so I took this bicycle back to the shelter and I offered everybody $100 if they could ride it. And those people that was resistant, I offered them $500. I've even offered it $10,000. But guess what? Nobody's ever been able to win the money. And the reason they couldn't win the money is because they were programmed as children to turn right to go right. So I'll put this extra gear. Let me see if I can ride this thing. Okay, so I do have $100 in my pocket. Josh, you don't mind coming over here and giving this a try real quick? Come on. If you can ride it, I'll give you $100. If Josh can ride this bicycle successfully, we're going to give him $100. So Josh, all you have to do is just head out just like I did. There you go. You can do whatever. Okay, what's going to happen with Josh is that his brain's going to go back to the 5-year-old, 6-year-old perception of reality. So Josh will not be able to ride this bicycle successfully because he's programmed to ride the other bicycle. Okay, go ahead. You see what happened? That's weird, wasn't it? Made it look easy. Yeah, it's real easy. You understand, I did not want to learn how to ride this bicycle, but I messed with it year after year after year after year, and one day I could ride it. So I rushed home to see if I could ride the regular bicycle, and I couldn't ride a regular bicycle. Okay, so that's not a really good feeling. I mean, you didn't have a good feeling. All these people watching you, you're unsuccessful, uneasy, uncomfortable. Okay, so what I did is reprogram my brain to ride both bicycles. Because basically, when you turn and drive a car, you turn right to go right? There was nights when I jacked with these things. I'll be going home at 2 o'clock in the morning from work. Next thing you know, my brain didn't know what I was driving. It didn't know I was driving a car. It thought I was driving this bicycle. So milliseconds, I had to wake up. And there was times I'd go teach this at Texas A&M, this course, and I couldn't get out of the parking lot because I'd push this bicycle all the way across campus for miles and come back and get out, and I couldn't get out of the parking garage because every time I turned right, I think I was going left. So you got to be really careful when you reprogram your brain. So what I had to do is program my brain to ride both bicycles. So I got one of the fewest brains in the world that possibly can ride 2 bicycles. Thank you, Josh, for trying. Anybody else want to try? I mean, $100. Guys, yeah, come on. Just give me somebody. One more person. Got to be somebody else that's got a little air in the basketball. Oh, you just got to drive it. You got to ride it. Well, at least go as far as I do. So what's your name? What's your name? Huh? All right. Okay, Brent, catch him if he falls here. Don't go too fast. Yeah, just go. All right. King, stay up. King, stay up. Whoa. Stay with him, Brent. Stay with him, Brent. So Josh, it'll take you about a week, 2 weeks to actually do that. To actually just practice, and you rewire your brain. Okay, so the lesson learned here, I guess I'm going to have to leave this bicycle up here so you can rewire your brain. You're not the bus driver around here, are you? Yeah, I hate to get on that bus after. Okay, thank you for. So basically what I recognize in the homeless shelter, if I get the group out of a toxic filter, if I get them out of their shame and guilt, apathy, and grief, guess what? We get to their fear, we get to their addictions, we get to their anger, we get to their pride. You know what happened? They go into resistance because they love their fear is much greater than their grief, their sadness. So we can get them out of this toxic filter. But as I was putting heat on the individual, we get to a polluted filter, and they go into resistance. But what I recognize is that I have to keep putting the right energy and information into the system. Does that make any sense? Does that make any sense? So imagine when a child is born, what's inside the basketball is the soul. Does that make any sense? The body and brain's a basketball. What's inside is the consciousness, the thinker, the experiencer. Okay, so what the problem was is around 5 years old, somebody come along and put a knife in the basketball. Next thing you know, guess what happened? No bounds, no curiosity, no creativity. All of a sudden, this was governing the child. And eventually the child grew up into an adult, but was still, their life was being dictated by the shame and the guilt and the grief and the humiliation, the sadness. So my objective is to walk into a group and see how fast we can put air back in the basketball. Does that make any sense? So what we want is the individuals to look like this. So when we go cater an inauguration for President Bush, the first inauguration, we fed 32,000 people in Washington, D.C. So we fed 22,000 at 3 inaugural balls, plus another additional 10,000 people while we're there. Hurricane Ike, hurricane that hit Houston, Beaumont, straight up to Tyler, Texas, we were catering 20,000 meals a day for 3 weeks. Okay, so what kind of employees would I want? All right, you'll start to see what I'm talking about. So I gotta have people that can think on their own behalf.
Okay, guys, y'all see the flattened basketball, all right? Now I want y'all to think about this in perspective, because I want y'all to emotionally connect to the kids you interact with on a daily basis. Think about the knife that a lot of these kids had to experience. The sexual abuse, the mental abuse, you know what I'm saying? Just process that. So the question is, why would their basketball get flattened? Well, a lot of times, you see this ball? If I stick this ball on the side of a mountain, is it going to roll anywhere? No. Extremely easy to control, okay? So people get overwhelmed as a parent, and they start gradually deflating the basketball. Now, I've seen at this school, from what I've witnessed, is y'all do not deflate the basketball as the standard school. And let me tell you why. I have never seen so many kids who curse as I got to this school. And I have not seen one of them get in trouble, and I like that. Because if you think about this fact, right? So if you think about their programming, you think about their upbringing, you think about the experiences they've had, cursing is probably equal to saying, how you doing, right? So they've been listening to this since they were 2 months old, a month old. So they're extremely comfortable at that place, okay? So imagine inside the standard school, If one kid walked up to me and goes, "Hey, see you're a smoker, what's a badass girl mean?" I was like, "It means it's badass, I guess." Imagine what would have happened at that point. Somebody would have came in and deflated his basketball. So I don't know, do y'all have standardized testing up here? I know we got it real bad in okay. 90% of the teachers that I cross paths with hate standardized testing. It dictates their life. It flattens their basketball, but they keep pushing it. Why? Because income, funding, etc. is determined by that. So kids who are in Texas, I don't know when it starts here, but in Texas it starts at 3rd grade. So 2nd graders are like this. They got a lot of balance, they got a lot of play. I want you to process how much data is retained by the time a child turns 5. A child will learn more by the time he turns 5 than we will probably learn in the rest of our life. Walking and talking is incredibly hard to learn. It's incredibly hard to learn. Take your legs away for a year and then see what happens, okay? That is an inflated basketball. And I kind of wanted to bring that to y'all. I want y'all to put that in your consciousness, your soul, your spirit. I want you to emotionally, see what we do when we make this barbecue, we think about the captain, not the ship. Okay? So we think about the spirit, we think about the consciousness. We emotionally connect. We push our soul and our heart into that food. We started at 4 a.m. this morning. We didn't wrap up till about midnight on Friday. Yesterday was Easter, so we tried to, but we're still up here. But it's about setting an environment for y'all to have a great experience. So we're trying to emotionally connect to y'all through food. And I want y'all, I know, because I've heard, there's a kid, Jacob. I'm not going to say his last name because I was told not to. But Jacob has so much air in him. If you don't pay attention to it, you're going to miss it. It's going to mess with me. I got to be careful. Jacob brought me Kleenexes today because on Friday my eyes were watering so bad because of that smoker. He was concerned about me. Now I want y'all to process this. Process this 12-year-old going home. I didn't see him for about 10 minutes yesterday because of Easter. He showed up this morning with Kleenex in his pocket, concerned about me. Y'all follow me? Is that going to get praised? Is somebody going to recognize that? See, I recognize that because I got a 12-year-old that I couldn't get to bring his own shoes when we leave the house. So I recognize what's going on. That situation is a highly inflated basketball, but it's so minor that you might miss it. I had a lady tell me over here, she said, she goes, I was cooking pancakes about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. And Jacob, I got to make sure I don't say his last name because this is what I've been calling for the last 3 days. But Jacob walked over and said, make sure bubbles come through that pancake. That's when you know to flip it. Now process that. Process that. There was a story I heard where he was fishing in the grass, thought he was going to caught a fish. That has been his brand. I wasn't told about the pancakes. I was told about the other side. You follow me? And I want y'all to emotionally connect. And that's why I kind of emphasize this flattened basketball. Because what y'all are seeing has been shredded so bad that the basketball won't even be recognizable anymore. What y'all get to see because of the situation y'all are in. And I'm realizing that just talking to staff and people around here. So when y'all are in, and it comes back to the cursing. I've enjoyed seeing it because nobody goes in and just. I'm gonna give y'all a story real quick, and I'll make it quick. My son comes home from school one day. He's in kindergarten, and he's a flattened basketball. Comes home upset. I said, "What happened?" He said, "I don't know. I got in trouble. I had to miss recess." Now knowing my kid, he doesn't get in trouble. He's not a bad kid. He's not, he's smart. I said, "Okay, well, what does a lot of parents do when there's a note that says, oh, he was acting up in class and he had to miss recess?" Well, they spank him, right? Go to your room. You need to listen to your teacher, right? Well, let me tell you what happened. I go to his teacher the next day. His teacher was my teacher in kindergarten. She's been doing this for 30 years. I go to his teacher and I say, well, tell me what happened. She said, he was playing in the projector when we were supposed to do our work. I said, okay, well, let's break it down. Where was he sitting? She said he was sitting right here. I said, where was the projector? She said it was right here, shooting that direction. I said, okay. What was going on? She goes, well, I put a piece of paper on all their desks. Now I want y'all to picture he's 5 years old, sitting here. Piece of paper. It's got words on it. You follow me so far? Everybody with me? She says, I'm going to call out net words, and I want you to point at them as I call them out. She says, and. Well, my son starts playing on the projector. So his hand's on the projector. I said, hold up. I slowed her down. I said, hold up. I said, what was on the projector? When I said that, she fell back in her seat. She goes, and? I said, was he pointing at and? Or was he playing the projector? And she goes, he was pointing at and. So she had an enlightenment at that moment, but she had completely deflated my son's basketball for trying to participate. You follow me? And that is nothing compared to what y'all are having to do with. Nothing. So I just wanted to emphasize a little bit more on the inflated and deflated basketball, and I wanted y'all, as he's speaking, I want y'all just to think about the traumatization and the stuff that these kids have been going through. And Jacob has rocked. I am completely blown away by Jacob. I am serious, 100%. I had a couple of conversations, and I know now Jacob doesn't get a Christmas present. I get one from who donates? Goldman Sachs, but mom and dad ain't gonna send him one, right? So that's messing with me. It's been in my brain. But just seeing how he's so emotionally connected to me. But I tell you, between us, don't tell nobody, he burned his hand today. And he's going, I burned my hand. I said, Jacob, shut up. He said, why? I said, because if you keep telling everybody you burn your freaking hand, they're going to not let you come over here anymore. And he's like, I didn't burn my hand. He said, I'm going to put a glove on so nobody sees it. I said, now you're getting it. Yesterday, he says, chicken spicy. I said, no, it's not. He said, yeah, it is. No, it's not. I said, it's in your brain. You're being tricked. It's not spicy. I said, you're the one who frames the spice. So we've had a lot of interaction. He's one I don't know he wants to cook. And Jacob's highly impatient. And I said, Jacob, number one, if you're going to be a cook, you have to have patience. And number two, if you're going to cook barbecue, you have to have a hell of a lot of patience. Because it's 18 hours for one piece of meat. So I just want to let y'all hear that story, and seeing the basketball, I just want to kind of emphasize it a little bit more. Go ahead.
Thank you, Brent. Don't give him a hand. So I teach in these homeless shelters, and it took me 6 weeks to figure out exactly what causes people to be homeless. And it was that question, when did you perceive your power or control was taken away? And I started hearing all these stories of a 5-year-old. And I told this story, my daughter is over here, she's 17. 15 years ago, she was 2 years old. And she went up and told my wife, Allison, shut up, mama. So in the shelter, I asked everybody in the shelter, I said, what would happen to you if you said, shut up, mama? And I had all these people in the shelter talk about how they probably got their mouth washed out with soap, there had been a stick. Everybody had got a beating, a really bad beating, if they said, shut up, mama. And I was talking to these 60 people in the homeless shelter. So I asked them, do you have children? I said, what would you do to your children? And they had the same answer. We would wash their mouth out with soap, we would spank them. So anyway, 2 days later, after Abby said, shut up, mama, I said, Abby, where'd you learn this word, shut up, from? Did mama say it? She said, nope, Abby said it. You understand? She's 2 years old. This is 15 years ago. She's over here. She's 17 now, so she's over here. So I said, did the babysitter say it? She said, no. I said, did you hear it on TV? She said, no. I said, the movies. And my wife said, Shrek, and Abby said, yes. Have you ever watched the movie Shrek and the relationship between Shrek and the donkey? Y'all seen it before, and Shrek will say, shut up, donkey. Okay, so what is the relationship? Were they trying to protect each other? Were they trying to love each other? You got to look at a 2-year-old perception. So here was a 2-year-old perception of shut up, which could represent I love you. But in these group of people in the shelter, they would have got beat up, terrified. mouth shoved down the throat. So the idea was that, Yeah, mouth soap down their throat. You got to understand the experience of those. And here I'm in this group of people to teach them how to feel lovable, how to go back and change those adverse childhood experiences. My other son's over here is Edison. 6 years ago, I said, Edison, I was teaching quantum mechanics. I said, what is this if nobody's sitting in it? Is it a chair? He said, no. I said, if I sit in it, what is it? He says, a chair. I said, if I stand up on it, what is it? He said, a stool. I said, what happens if I hit you over the head with it? What would it be then? He said, I'll tell Mama. So raising your own children to see the world differently and see that this not only a chair, it's a potential of anything that you want it to be. Right now I'm using it as a teaching tool. So what changes is your observation. So teaching how the universe works in the shelter is very, very critical. So in the most critical part in the shelter is that you got to have a vision. You got to make up your mind. You got to make up your mind to define your future by a vision. So that was the critical piece of the puzzle. We started teaching people how to create visions. And so what we had to do is continuously put energy and information. I had to take basketballs in. There'd be an individual tell me a story, and I would take a knife and put it in the basketball, and then I'll throw the basketball to the individual, and I said, you got to fix the wound, the spiritual wound. You got to go back and change those stories. You got to go change your vision. And so we started creating the world's fastest program. Jeff Miller was 10 years in the drug rehab program at the VA hospital in Dallas, Texas. 10 years. After 10 years, they said, we can't help you. He came through our program, 4 2.5-hour segments. He was free. He's been working for me for 5 years. Free of drugs, free of all these issues. And the most honorable person you'll ever meet. The guy's most dedicated and trustworthy, and a person who will just work his tail off to satisfy and be a benefit to other people. When I first met him, he thought people existed for his benefit. That was the number one reason why people end up homeless. They actually think people exist for their benefit. So when we teach a person how to go back and change adverse childhood experiences, how to reprogram the brain, how to get out of these toxic and polluted filters, next thing you know, we got to this. We got up to a higher level of the promised land. So over here, what we're looking for is putting energy and information to the system. We want the person to be intuitive, which leads to curiosity. So we have all kinds of programs. How many of you guys ever bought milk in a grocery store? Raise your hand. I want you to know that's a lie. Not one of you ever bought milk in a grocery store. If the milk was sour, did you get what you wanted? So are you going to the store to buy milk or benefits of milk? Because if you're just buying milk, you should be happy with sour milk. Do you want milk or the benefits of milk? What is it? Benefits? Yes? Did y'all want barbecue today or the benefits of barbecue? Did you want buttermilk pie or the benefits of buttermilk pie? There is a difference. Because basically if you go to a store and just get milk and it's sour, you got milk. You did not get what you wanted. So the most critical piece of the puzzle is that we have to get to a world of understanding the benefits. So in the shelter, they're programmed to think that people exist for their benefit. I had to set the stage for them to think that people exist to be beneficial too. To serve others had to be the vision. So we started practicing. Have you ever bought milk in a grocery store? Yes. You'll say yes. I say no. We argue about it. Next question I asked in the shelter after the milk question, I said, did you have a father? They said yes. I said, did you get the benefits of a father? Guess what? I have never met anybody in a homeless shelter ever got the benefits of a father. Out of the 285 men in the prison that I teach, not one person said they got the benefits of a father. They had a father, but no benefits. Does that make any sense? So the third question is this. I'm an employer. Do I need an employer or the benefits of an employee? Next thing you know, they're saying benefits. I said, well, explain that to me. So the most critical piece of the puzzle is the explanation. So what catechism is to the muscle, there's understanding to the human being, which leads to wisdom. So what I would do in the shelter, I say, well, explain to me how you're going to be a benefit. So these guys in the homeless shelter have never thought about that idea. So they would get up and say, well, I'm an employer. Do I need employer benefits? They say, benefits. Well, I explain that. So they started thinking about that and practicing that idea over and over, and they start developing a vision. So I come back next week, and next thing you know, everybody's got these ideas how they're going to be a benefit and how they were a benefit to somebody else. Downtown Dallas, there was a shelter I was teaching at. And so instead of going panhandling and taking and stealing or doing whatever, they started thinking about how they can be a benefit and started practicing. Does that make any sense? Does that make sense? So the idea is we want the person to have an understanding, and when you understand something, you explain it, and that's what we're doing. So the milk question led to the father question, led to the employer question. Do I need an employer or the benefits? And they would say benefits. So when you put all this energy and information into the system, we start developing intuitiveness and curiosity, which led to courage, which led to neutrality. Neutrality, willingness not to be a victim, led to willingness, led to acceptance, led to reason. So all of a sudden we started getting into a clean filter. Reticular, are y'all familiar with the reticular activating system? Anybody? It's part of the brainstem. And what it does is filters data. So if you raise a child in shame and guilt and grief, basically, and they feel inadequate, guess what? The reticular activating system will look for evidence all day long to feel inadequate, unlovable, unimportant. They're actually programmed just like that bicycle. The reason Josh couldn't ride the bicycle is because his reticular activating system, tied to the cerebellum, the motor skill part of the brain, the hippocampus is the flash drive of his brain, is programmed to ride the other bicycle. But the bicycle's not going to send somebody to drug addiction and homelessness. But the idea of shame and guilt and grief and fear and all these other different greater systems were sending these people to these negative situations. So if we plant this into the system, guess what? The person became in orbit. So the idea is we had to take people out of orbit. And so the idea is we had to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, we had to blast off and get to this side. So on this side is the benefits of milk. Over here is the milk. Over here is the system that wears boots and spurs by the person who runs the organization. They're saddle, bridle, and bit by the people who's at the lower. In that system, you make commodities. In that system, the dynamic balance is obedience. So there, everybody has to be obedient and compliant. So it starts looking at analysis, and you start looking at this system, it becomes a machine. Next thing you know, a person's in the machine. They're a robotic extension of the factory. Next thing you know, this is all part of the machine. You got a human being here, and you got a human being here, and you got a human being here, but somebody comes along and says, wait a minute, let's extract the value out of the system. Let's replace the human, because artificial intelligence, computers, software, algorithms are much more obedient, compliant, conforming. So next thing you know, you start to replace this human being with artificial intelligence. So we create these systems, top-down command and control systems. We call it autocracy. We see it, a Newtonian worldview. And over here is something different. Go ahead.
Okay, guys. A couple things. I kind of want to bring it back so you understand. Right here is the resistance in barbecue, okay? So a tough brisket. What happens is that brisket will go into a stall at 140 degrees. So it'll start to sweat. The liquid starts breaking down, the moisture starts breaking down. A brisket's made up of 95% water. So if you stab it, why doesn't it pop like a balloon? Well, that water is bound really tight with the protein strands, okay? So we apply the heat, and it gets 140. It starts activating, starts breaking down, starts sweating, and goes in stall. So what a lot of people do in the barbecue industry, a lot of newbies in barbecue, they panic. So they try to increase the heat. They try to hammer it. Well, what happens is it pushes through and it'll stay tough. Now, he was looking at this gradual chart because we started doing barbecue classes about 2 years ago, and he started looking at it and it started kind of making sense. So this chart applies to basically anything in life, from the bicycle to, let's say, working out. So you're going up. Are you going to hit something? Are you going to hit a point and while you're working out, you're like, oh, I don't, which I'm not obviously the best representation of that, but are you going to get to a point where you're like, this is kind of getting hurt and I don't really know if I want to continue? And then you push your way through and then you start seeing the change. That's where this whole vision has came from. On this side here, guys, so if we look at shame and guilt, are we ever going to be able to shame a kid out of shame? Can we take darkness and add more darkness to try to get rid of the darkness? No, it takes light, right? So this side, and I want to bring this up before he got on that side, and I want to kind of explain the value of this side from the other people's perspective, but the world is changing too fast. Humans are reproducing too fast, and jobs aren't being created like they used to be. So a long time ago, Henry Ford, anybody heard of Henry Ford? Henry Ford realized that I want to create a business that runs like an automobile. So when the alternator breaks, what do? I just put a new one in there. So all day long, what's your name? Jed? Jihad? All right. All day long, Jihad puts a tire on a car. All day long. 7 days a week, 5 days a week, whatever. All month long. Well, what happens? How hard is it to put a tire on a car if the car is lifted and you've been doing it forever? It's incredibly easy. He says one day, I don't like this anymore. I'm done. I quit. Well, how long does it take to teach somebody to put a tire on a car? About 5 minutes. Okay? Especially if the equipment's right. So this system right here was designed for that because humans had value at that time. We're going to make them interchangeable. We're going to take away their spirit. Who wants to go and do the same single thing all day long? I don't, personally. Well, China said, I'll do it cheaper than Americans. So what happened? They took those jobs to China. Well, India says, I'll do it cheaper than China. So we transferred them all to India, right? You follow me so far? And then robots said, I'll do it cheaper than everybody. So they brought the jobs back to America, but now they're filling those holes with robots. I'm trying to put this in perspective so y'all can understand. School systems are designed, not this school, like I've said 100 times. My kids, I'll take you an example. I don't know if it's here, but at lunch, there's 1 and 2. 1 means complete silence. 2 means you can barely whisper, and they rarely get the opportunity to have 2 at lunch. Okay? A lot of times they tell them to eat. This is my kids' school. This is what they deal with on a daily basis. I want y'all to think about what's the point of school? Is to teach you to be an adult. How many here has ever been on a sales meeting at lunch? Now imagine if all of a sudden that same system dictated your sales meeting where somebody walks by and goes, hey, you are being a little loud. Can y'all turn it down to 1? You know what? Go ahead and put your head down. That happens every single day at schools across America. This is not applicable to the real world. I don't know if that happens here, and if I offended somebody, sorry, but that's not applicable. Imagine if somebody showed up, said, I'm sorry, I got to put my head down during this meeting right now about progressing our life or progressing our company, or I'm going to buy a home or I'm going to buy a car. Imagine that theory. So, and I know y'all are experiencing the overwhelming data and sound and interaction. I understand that. But this system was designed to turn humans into interchangeable parts. The problem is that they're saying in like the next 10 years, every 18-wheeler is going to be driven by a robot. What are we going to do? How many jobs is that? I mean, look at drones. We're already getting planes flown by robots. The world is headed that direction. So this side of the chart is dying. Y'all have seen it. Y'all have seen these machines that make springs on YouTube and just cut it off. No human interaction. We've all seen it. This side of the chart is dying. It's leaving. It's not going to exist anymore. So our children, the children you're interacting with, the market's going to be highly, highly, highly competitive. Extremely competitive. And if you walk into a situation, especially, and you go, well, please tell me what to do next. And then when you finish that task, please tell me what to do next. And you finish that task, you're not going to have a career, because a robot will just keep doing it over and over and over and over, because you just have to program it in there and do it one time. So I kind of want to bring that over here. And that's where I want to explain the whole resistance, and then coming back to orbit, where we initially saw it, and then why this side of the chart is dying. So if you want to take it back over.
So the objective is to put intuitiveness and curiosity and courage and neutrality and willingness and acceptance and reason back into the system to get to the vision. Eventually, the idea is to put love, joy, peace, and enlightenment into the system. And so the whole process of going into a prison or whatever, because 2/3 of the people that get out of prison go back in 3 years, 40% the first year. So the idea is that if you put this back into the system, and prisons are actually working this way. That's why 2/3 go back in 3 years. Because basically they're trying to produce a commodity, and they put shame back into the system, thinking, well, we just keep these people in orbit. Next thing you know, they come out of prison. Next thing you know, you got a negative situation. So when I go into the prison, I say, I'm not here to change the apples. What I'm here is teach you how to redesign your apple barrel. And that's why we teach them how to cook barbecue, because fundamentally they start seeing there's two types of apple barrels. You start here, if you don't put the right temperature, let's say you got a smoker out there and you only get 150 degrees in the smoker. Guess what? Your brisket just stay in orbit. It'll never get to 160. Does that make sense? The smoker that we rented out here, they got two vents that pulls in oxygen and releases oxygen, but they're too small, so we had to crack the door. We had to crack the door on the pit to get enough oxygen to come through it. Otherwise, we've never got enough 225-degree temperature into the system. So the idea, we had to adapt that program to be able to put the right energy and information into the system to get to that 195, the brisket that y'all had today. So the objective into the homeless shelters and the prisons we teach at, also I teach in the inner city school, over 600 students at Carter High School, inner city school in South Dallas. Basically, we invested this back into the program to get people into a higher level of awareness. Does that make any sense? Has anybody got any questions about what we're doing in Dallas? And anybody got any thoughts on it?
I got one thing to say, and this is back to what he's saying. Our application, right? So there's acquisition application. Standardized testing is about acquisition. How much data can I put on this kid? And how much can they regurgitate for one day? But it's not necessarily applicable data, right? So when that kid's done, I'm going to say, hey, all you've been studying for this whole year, go into the world and make a living with that. It's hard, right? So what I want to say is, so my dad started Eddie Deen Catering in 1979, 1980. Catered presidents, catered all the world, catered Dallas Cowboys, catered Mavericks, catered in Switzerland, catered in Africa. I mean, we're barbecue. We're in New York right now because of barbecue. Just process that information. So, I'm not trying to toot my own horn. I just want to say, I want to show how we've used this for success, okay? Half my employees, I got a restaurant called Smoke Monkey. It's called Smoke Monkey BBQ. It's a free-for-all. I have no rules for my employees, for my customers. No rules. You want to drag the table outside? Go ahead. I don't care. I got a bounce house and a playground outside. I got kids all day long running in barefoot, drinking out of the soda machine, running back out the door. And everybody is extremely comfortable and joyous to be a customer at this place. Like, they will fight you. Like, if you live in a neighborhood and you go in there and say, I had a bad experience, and that neighborhood's within the range of my restaurant, I don't have to fix it. My customers are going and fix it, because they will jump on you. Matter of fact, two of my employees got in an argument the other day because there was a screw up. You know what their argument was? Which one was going to have the right to go and apologize to the customer, and that's the truth. But here's the thing. Half my employees are at a halfway house, and this is what I kind of bring it. Half my employees live in a halfway house right now as we speak. I do not make schedules for them. I let them self-organize. And this is the thing, kind of awareness I had lately. And this is why I figured We've kind of transcended in the last year. Let me explain why, because I finally had this enlightenment. Do y'all know what the difference between a drug dealer and a business owner is? Anybody? A drug dealer will meet you at 3 a.m. on a Saturday morning to sell you his product, and a business owner won't. So I have said, all right, one of my best buddies, he's a special agent for DPS, which is the troopers. All he does is hunt drug dealers, and he says they are the most clever, hard-working people he's ever seen. He says he's got the best technology in the world, and they outsmart him constantly with some basic stuff. So my point is why are they selling drugs? Not because of their lack of effort, lack of intelligence. It's because they a lot of times don't have another resource, or they can't get their standard job because, as I almost said his name, as what I've been calling him, as Jacob, the tighter the collar is, the more he's going to resist, right? So he's probably going to go into self-destructive mode, tear everything down. I don't do that to these guys. So if they come to me, it's all about application. It's not acquisition. It's about how can we apply the data. So they come to me, hey, I got this idea. And we've all came to agreement. The customer decides if the idea is good or bad. Not me, not my general manager, not my wife, not the coworkers, the customer. So we will take that information, we will take that situation and take it to the customers. And if the customer says it's bad, the guys, my crew, have came to the conclusion that they can accept that data is okay. Y'all follow me so far? Because if I walked in there and said, hey, Jeff, your chicken sucks. Get off the line. Well, how's he going to respond? I just deflated his basketball and his history, his upbringing, because, you know how y'all know, y'all see it. Y'all know how he's going to respond. He's probably going to blow up. He's probably going to, get angry. It doesn't change. What y'all are seeing now, it doesn't change unless the environment's set right. They will act the same way at 60 and 70 years old as they do now. The only thing is when they act that way at work and I don't fire them or jump down their throat, I just kind of back up and say, let me explain why. And it never happens again because they reprogram immediately and they say, oh, well, this isn't like the rest of my life has been. We go in these prisons. We go to Hutchinson. What year was Hutchinson built? It was like
70s, 1970s.
Yeah, it's like 1970 as a temporary prison for like a year till they got the real one done, and they never finished the real one, so it's still the same prison. So just process the plumbing and the electricity and the AC. It's miserable, and when you talk to them, you can tell they're just doing whatever they can to fit a script, but it's not really who they are. So we let them be who they are. And we just try to find an environment where they can feel lovable. Free enough. Go ahead. Lovable. Take over.
So the idea is there was a school in Garland took veterans. They created an HVAC school. Took 18 months of air-conditioned curriculum and reduced it to 42 days. My job at the school is to feed these guys, these veterans, 2 meals a day, breakfast and lunch, and make sure they have a great learning and experience. So in this school, it had the highest placement rating of any technical school in America, 82.5%. So imagine a veteran is a ship and no captain, he's drifting. If a body brings a ship, he's out there with a ship and no captain drifting. Next thing you know, he comes to this school. In 42 days, the hiring community was the customer was there to hire them. So the student was never the customer. At this school, the customer was the hiring community. So we created an environment where the objective is to produce a benefit of a product and service. The product was the veteran. So in this school, 85% of their time was in the application of knowledge. They were in labs, learning how to fix air conditioning. So we had this kind of a program. The first 21 days, they learned the parts. The last 21 days, they understood how the parts interacted. That was the key. So this school was very, very successful and was growing exponentially. It was the 5th, 6th largest school in America dealing with veterans and GI fields. 18 months ago, imagine this, I'm the caterer at this school. There were 60 FBI officers came in with guns and lasers, and they shut down the school. 18 months later, we still hadn't got an indictment, no charges, no reason for shutting it down. They just thought it was fraud because they never seen a school like that. All other schools are 18 months, but the problem with these 18 months programs, you go to school for 18 months and guess what? You didn't know how to fix an air conditioner because they weren't testing the application, they were testing the acquisition of knowledge. You learn about the parts, but you never learn how the parts interacted, and there were so many distorted signals in the program that fundamentally they would graduate and nobody wanted to employ. So this school was built on the hiring community. All schools should look and bring the hiring community into the system. What is it that we want our children to grow up to be? Well, we want them to be an asset in our community. So the key is to create a system where, like green chimneys, let's say this is green chimney, what is the greater system? So the subsystem is defined by the purpose of the greater system. This is the education system. So what does the greater system look like? Well, that's the community. So the community needs to be inside the system. They all should be in alignment. This is called synthesis. Another way of looking and solving problems is analysis. Here is the whole greater than the sum of the parts. You got to look at the greater system, the community. So this school was based on this idea in Dallas, Texas. Very successful school, but the government has never seen a school like that before, and he thought it was fraud. But they have no reason, no understanding. There was over $10 million in funds that civil forfeiture they took away from the school, which cost me lots of money because I was the caterer, catering 800 meals a day at this school. Not only they could not pay me for what they owed me, I lost millions and millions of dollars of revenue because the government came in and says, this type of school doesn't look correct. So we're at this point right now and going into the judicial system to bring freedom back to this school because basically what we were doing, we fixed over 3,000 veterans. A lot of veterans were homeless. And the next thing you know, a veteran got a great job because we put this type of program into a system, in the education system. So every day we're fighting for a new way of doing education. So an education should be about a child learning how to produce the benefits of product and services. Imagine a kindergarten where all the kids are, the job is to make the world's greatest lemonade. Make the world's greatest lemonade after 6 months, you bring an audience in. Audience says pass or fail. If they pass, they can go into the market with their lemonade. If they fail, they can go back to the lab. So this should be what an education system looks like. Because basically at the end of the day, did y'all need barbecue or do you need the benefits of barbecue? If we came all the way to New York just to serve barbecue, that would just not be the story, the bigger story that we want to tell. When we come to New York, what we want to do is show you a different way of thinking, that education should look like this. This is the future of education. I went to Austin to talk to the Speaker of the House. I went to talk about barbecue. 4 hours later, they were still talking about this idea. How can we get this in Texas? How can we get it into the program? How can we start up this HVAC school again? Not only HVAC school, how about a culinary school, a diesel mechanic school? The idea, it doesn't take 2 years to learn how to fix things. It don't take 2 years to learn how to fix an air conditioner. Because we were proven that we could do it in 42 days. The key is that we built a system like this, where the vet was working on being a benefit, And you bring in the hiring community into the system, where they're a part of the system, they're part of the vision. Next thing you know, you got success. So what we're trying to do is recreate education to look differently, not to be a top-down command and control system where a child has to be obedient, compliant, conforming, where they have to learn how to wear a saddle bridle on a bit, where there's somebody with boots and spurs that has to take control over the child. We want to set the system where they have freedom to think on their own behalf, where they can start developing visions, because they have to start being something different than artificial intelligence. They got to have empathy. They got to be different than what algorithms and computers and software are able to do. It is not going to work. This system of education is not going to work. This is the future of education. So whatever you plant, if you plant peace and joy and love back into the system, you're going to get the same. I was raised on a farm. We planted corn. Guess what? We didn't get watermelons. We planted corn. We didn't get cucumbers. If we planted corn, we got corn. So whatever you plant into the system is what you're going to get in return. So if the idea if a child is brought up in a toxic, polluted reticular activating system, guess what? For the rest of their lives, just like riding a bicycle, that filter is going to dictate the realities of their life. If that child feels inadequate, they will look for evidence to feel inadequate all day long. So the objective is we want to come to New York and explain what we're doing in Texas, how we're trying to set the stage to walk people, walk education to the system. So I'm always in a battle because basically the system says we got to maintain this, we got to preserve this system. And I say this is not going to be the vision of the future. It's not going to work. Does that make any sense? So I want to leave that with y'all. I really appreciate the opportunity to come up and make buttermilk pie for you guys. If you ain't got a piece of buttermilk pie, I want you to make sure you come over here. We got some chocolate buttermilk pie and I had a few with pecans. If you never got a piece of that, I want you to know you tasted the soul of us from Texas. So that's what we do. We go into prison, we go into homeless shelters, we go into inner city schools. We teach people how to perform from the soul. We teach people how to go from deflated basketball. The idea is that we give the basketball, we give the opportunity back to the individual. And I said, if you look like this, you think like this, guess what? You got to start putting the right information into the system, the right energy into the system. Imagine us today, let's say we want to have supper. Our vision is that we all come together and we're going to eat. But what happens if nobody gets up and starts turning on the stove? What happens if we all just sit here and do nothing? We don't put any energy and information. Guess what? We're not going to be able to eat tonight. Next thing I know, Josh got an idea. He said, well, we'll call a pizza place. At least somebody did something, put some energy and information to the system to get to the promised land, to get to this tipping point. So I want to leave you with that. The idea is that sometimes when you go into resistance, just say 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and blast off. When you want to be that person of more healthy, next thing you know, you got to fight through the battle. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, get up out of bed and go do something about it. That's what we have to do in Texas. We have to get up and go do something about it. When Red Cross called me, Eddie, can you feed 13,000 people? They called me at 11 o'clock in the morning. Can you feed 13,000 people at 7 o'clock tonight? All these people were stuck down in the Superdome during Hurricane Katrina. I said, you want a hot meal or a cold meal? They said, these people deserve a hot meal. I said, no problem. I said, I'll take care of it. Because they're on buses coming from the Superdome to Dallas, Texas. I got a business building in downtown Dallas right next to the Dallas Convention Center. So these 13,000 people was on this way to Dallas on these buses to the Dallas Convention Center. So I go next door to the Dallas Convention Center. I said, guys, do y'all have a kitchen that I could use? And they knew who I was. I'm their competition. They said, no, we don't have a kitchen. I said, well, there's 13,000 people coming to your house. He said, we can't feed these people. We don't have any food. We can't do this. I said, well, guess what, guys? They're not coming to my house. They're coming to your house. I'm just here to be a benefit. So that next thing you know, they came up with an idea to give me a kitchen. I had to call U.S. Food Service. I said, can y'all deliver vegetables? There was a big chicken operation out in Grand Prairie, and I called them, and I said, hey, guys, I need to feed 13,000 people in 8 hours. Can you join up with me? And they said, yeah, we're willing to do that. And I had wrote on my desk 5,500 pounds. And I asked, how much of this product you have? You have a chicken breast that's already cooked, and all I got to do is heat and serve because we only have 8 hours. You know, brisket, it's taking 18 hours. We can't cook on barbecue. So do you have a product? And they said, yeah. Let me look on the computer. And I didn't tell them how much I needed. I needed 5,500 pounds. They came back and said, we got 5,500 pounds. I didn't tell them. They had exactly what I need. I said, can you deliver it to the Dallas Convention Center in 1 hour? And they said, yes. So they delivered to the convention center. I was teaching at homeless shelters. So I called the homeless shelters. Hey guys, I need a lot of people to come down and help me cook. So next thing you know, we had other people said yes. So we started getting this information. We had people with courage, neutrality, and willingness, and acceptance, and reason, love, joy, peace. We put in the system, so we fed over 28,000 people at the Dallas Convention Center that weekend. Then Brent was headed to New Orleans. Encore Electrical Service was going to New Orleans to try to put all the electricity, help New Orleans put their electricity back together. So he had to get on a, how old were you then? 19 years old. So he had to take a crew to New Orleans and take care of these electrical guys. So that's who we are. We're an organization that says if we put this back into the system, we can get to the vision. So the key is to look at synthesis, be in sync, make sure the subsystems defined by the purpose of the greater systems. Always be in sync. And make sure you don't put the shame and the guilt and the grief and the fear into the system, because you'll just stay in orbit. So I want you to be able to take a picture of this, because it's my gift to you guys. And so if it could be a benefit to y'all, this Secrets to Barbecue, if you learn nothing else, you can go fix a brisket. If nothing else. But the idea is I want you to be able to think about how this could work for the benefit of Green Chimney. Anybody got any questions? Anybody got any thoughts? We got a microphone if anybody got a question. Are y'all asleep? Y'all awake? Did anybody get a benefit from today? Y'all did? Y'all gonna learn something? Well, I appreciate that. So I'll keep this bicycle. I still got $100 in my pocket. Anybody want to take a chance on this bicycle after the day? But what's the next program?
Ice cream. There's ice cream out front.
Okay, guys, I really appreciate everybody. There's an ice cream out front. All right, thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate it.